Afternoon, we got already an interesting view in the manifold problems shaking almost all of the countries in the former East Bloc. And yesterday we had the examples of Hungary, of Russia, and of some other states shaking by great problems of social and political transformations still 25 or 30, 25 years after the downfall of the Iron Curtain and of the breakdown of the communist regimes. It is no secret that most of the countries of the former East Bloc are still in very great difficulties on transformation and to sort to establish their new systems and to establish democracy. And often these difficult processes are flanked by contradicting and very shocking trends. In the political arena, we have the emerge of new, partly quite successful right radical and neo-Nazi parties. On the streets, minorities are often in danger to be physically attacked, and in the intellectual circles and even in the academic sphere, there's a freedoming trend back to dark nationalism and to historical revisionism. Our friend Rafi told it yesterday. He described it as a dangerous mix that calls the ghosts of the past, and I think this is exactly the point. So it belongs to the alarming trends that we have also demonstrations in the Baltic states where people celebrate former SS units, and this in the context of so-called heroism, just fighting the Soviet Union and the Red Army. And these are definitely frightening results, and in our session we will have one of the focus in our session will be on such developments in the Baltic states, and finally what could be done to prevent or to encounter these new phenomena. And of course, we have also in this context to tackle the issue of Holocaust denial and of Holocaust revisionism, and that leads us to our first panelist, that is Natasha Sinaeva Pankowska. We already know about her organizing talent together with her husband Rafael, which was crucial for the success of this conference. Natalia comes originally from Moldova. She holds an MA in Society and Politics, and she is currently writing her PhD at the Graduate School for Social Research of the Polish Academy of Science in Warsaw. Her current research topic is about Holocaust denial and national identity in Moldova. Aside this, Natalia is constantly writing for several political journals and papers. I want to mention only 3 of them: the Kiev Post in the Ukraine, the Never Again magazine in Poland, and the Russian language-based Yevreiskaya Gazeta in Berlin. In our panel, Natalia will speak about controversies around the Holocaust memory and Holocaust revisionism in Moldova and in Poland, and this in a comparative perspective. Natalia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone. My presentation will be focused on the Holocaust memory debate as linked to national identity in 2 post-communist countries, Poland and Moldova, after 1989. Although there are different historical, political and social contexts and factors, both countries have the same communist legacy, although not identical, as well as both countries had to accept the inconvenient rules while building their new post-communist national identity during the period of social and political transformation. While in the West the issue of the Holocaust has been worked through, in Eastern Europe it became a new challenge after the fall of the communist system. It was accompanied by victimhood revivers and the phenomenon of Holocaust denial. Both Moldova and Poland, to a greater or lesser extent, are not excluded from this phenomenon. The collapse of the communist regimes in Central and Eastern Europe and the international tendency to rewrite those parts of history that were previously suppressed or manipulated by them. Some Holocaust deniers use this context in order to pose as independent researchers who uncover some previously hidden aspects of history. There are several forms of Holocaust denial, or Holocaust revisionism, in Eastern Europe. Mike Shafley defines three forms of the Holocaust denial in Eastern Europe: outright deflective and selective negation. While outright denial rejects the existence of the Holocaust, the phenomenon of deflective negation is focused on the historical enemies or national minorities. Here, deniers use strategies such as accusation of ours or transfer of the charge to others, defense and positive self-representation, trivialization and mitigation of the seriousness of others' negative behavior and justifications. Very often Holocaust deniers transfer the charge to Jews themselves. The form of Holocaust denial which is most spread in Eastern Europe is selective negation. It does not deny the Holocaust as having place elsewhere, but excludes any participation of members of oath nation or seriously minimizes it. Deborah Lipstadt defines hardcore and softcore Holocaust denial. The hardcore type denies the fact of the Holocaust, its very existence. The softcore type includes all types of Holocaust minimization and trivialization. It is more spread in Eastern Europe, and it is more difficult to recognize. As Deborah Lipstadt writes, the example of softcore Holocaust denial can be the situation when Eastern European governments are arguing that Nazis and communists were equivalent, and the communists perpetrated genocide. Deborah Lipstadt described the post-communist growth of the Holocaust denial in Eastern Europe as a phenomenon brought by the mixture of extreme nationalism and traditional anti-Semitic populism. Okay. To understand the way Holocaust denial found its roots in Poland and Moldova, it is necessary to see its historical backgrounds and the way the collective memory has been constructed in these countries. It should be added that both Poland and Moldova always had a significant number of Jews living in each country. In 1940, approximately 350,000 of Jews lived in Moldova, only 90,000 survived. The total number of Moldovan inhabitants for the time was 2 and 7 million. Today, Poland has a very small Jewish community, Moldova too. In Poland, the complexity of the collective memory of the Second World War includes a wide range of issues, including the occupation of Poland in 1939, Polish-German, Polish-Russian, Polish-Ukrainian, and Polish-Jewish relations, with varying degrees of presence and attitudes. As sociologist Iwana Michlik writes, among all dark sides of the Polish past connected with the war, Polish-Jewish relations seems to be the most sensitive and complicated. The image of Polish people as the main victims of Nazism has been deeply rooted and widespread in Polish national memory. For many years this narrative has been dominant in the Polish society, and it is often still a dominant narrative. The Jews were not specified as a group which suffered the most during the Holocaust. It was generally believed that the majority of Poles helped Jews during the Second World War. Like Poland, Moldova has been a part of a communist system, and moreover, it was a part of the Soviet Union. It shared the common narrative of the Second World War for all Soviet countries and stand towards Jewish tragedy during the war. There was a national Moldovan specific too. During the war, Moldova was occupied by the Romanian army of Montanescu, who was Hitler's allies in the war. Holocaust on Romanian territories, which are today's Moldova, was mostly implemented by the Romanian army. As American historian of Moldovan origin, Vladimir Solonar writes, at least 130,000 Jews from Transnistria were liquidated by the Romanians in 1941-1944, which brings the whole number of perished Jews to about 250,000. This makes Transnistria one of the worst sites of the Holocaust in the whole Europe, and Romania as the second only to Germany in terms of its contribution to the tragedy. Since 1989, everything that was forbidden for the decades has finally entered the public discourse. New publications, movies, topics which were never discussed before, new monuments erected. It was an explosion of different memories. First part of this period can be defined in ethno-nationalistic terms, when an ethnic vision of the world dominated, which excluded the memory about local Jews and other national and ethnic minorities. dichotomy of us, people, and them, Communist Party, was very much stressed. It was also a period of strong nationalism and time when Holocaust deniers being more and delegitimized in the West moved to Eastern Europe. The second part of this period can be applied to the middle-late 1990s, beginning of 2000s. For example, Ivana Mihlik defines the period as pluralistic and civic one. The aim of this period was to include into the national memory the memory about the Holocaust and other inconvenient events. She writes that when it has been understood that past has a more complex character than its white and black discourse, which dominated in the better case communist historiography earlier. To some extent, it can be explained by the nostalgia for anti-ethnic past. And Poland is very characteristic here. We've present a very small Jewish community in Poland. There are 2 Jewish magazines in Poland. There is a Jewish theater. Every year a festival takes place. Festival of Jewish months, which take place regularly in Warsaw for several years. A lot of events are happening in Krakow, such as Jewish Culture Festival. There is a strong interest of Poles in Jewish culture. The situation in Moldova is different, and it seems Moldova is still not in the category of countries where there is a growth of interest in the Jewish culture, which was very present in Moldova in the past. While in Moldova, with a bigger number of Jewish inhabitants today, and with a long history of Jewish life in Moldova, and its contribution to the economic and social development of the country, the previous life of Jews in Moldova is generally unknown to current Moldovan inhabitants. The absence of information about previous rich Jewish life in Moldova accompanies the unwillingness to include Jewish narratives, such as Holocaust, into its national history. Based on the example above, it might be seen the situation in Poland is different, and as Mihlik claims, Poland is in its last phase of its long-term post-communist period. In her opinion, the second pluralistic phase went at a well-advanced level, and uncovers the debate about Yevabna is very characteristic here. In this context, she writes about other countries in the region, which in her opinion is still in its first ethno-nationalistic phase, and there are serious difficulties in initiating the debate about what happened to the Jews in historiography and public discourse. It seems that every other country in the region needs and still waits a similar debate as those in Poland. The debates which take Poland show that, in fact, as Ivana Mihlik wrote, a victim can be at the same time a cruel victimizer. Moldova, which is still in the beginning of a phase, when it's still a total denial of nation's responsibility for the Holocaust, where 2 types of Holocaust denial are prevalent, deflective and selective. In the case of Moldova, it has been even double difficulties. From one hand, there is unwillingness to talk about Romania, responsibility for extermination of Jews, because Romanians are considered as brothers, and with whom majority of Moldovans share one ethnic identity. From other, there is a total silence and lack knowledge of the local population involvement, Moldovan population. If in the case of Romania the process is difficult, the case of Moldovan population will be even more complicated, as it, in addition to Romanian involvement, it will need to discuss local Moldovan responsibility too. Post-Soviet Moldovan historians of one Romanian school simply copied the Romanian historiographical nationalistic tradition. They attempt to get free of all Soviet ideological paradigms and turned fast toward the patriotic past. They looked to Romania for seeking their new national identity and for national symbols, among which was Ion Antonescu, who still remains a main pan-Romanian symbol of patriotism for many people. Apologies for Antonescu is the important part of the World War II narrative of a contemporary pan-Romanian historical perspective. This patriotic past presents the Romanian nation as a victim of Bolshevism, and Jews were the main perpetrators here, a typical mixture of deflective and selective negation. One of the main points is strong belief in alleged Jewish loyalty to Soviet occupation and accused of the Jewish population in its establishment. The book blames the Jews themselves for the Holocaust, who does not deny the directly. The theses presented in the book were immediately supported by some right-wing pro-Romanian politicians, media. At the same time, it was hardly criticized by the Jewish community, other minorities, and a very small group of Moldovan intellectuals. As Dmitry Tartakovsky stresses, for the sake of a national myth grounded in Romanian victimization narrative, pan-Romanian historians de-emphasize and rationalize the Holocaust. As Ivana Mihlik writes, myth of Judeo-communism appeared in all Eastern European countries after the collapse of the community. in Baltic states, Hungary, Romania, Poland, Ukraine. Until today, it is the main element of ideology of many right-wing politicians, journalists and historians. Its main task is to support and minimize crimes against Jews during the Holocaust and after, as well as strengthen the nation's martyrdom during the war and the communism. It seems that myth of Judeo-communism is common for both Poland and Moldova, and it is still a driving force of contemporary anti-Semitism. Debates are important element of every democratic society. The Wagner debate reflects this process of democratization in Poland, and it also showed that Polish elites are capable to accept a difficult past. And the role of elites to raise such issues should not be underestimated. They can play both positive and negative role. Example of President Alexander Kwasniewski is very characteristic here. In comparison with Poland, Moldova does not move so much in this direction since 1989. It shows that also the weakness of Moldovan elites. For both countries, Poland and Moldova, the issue of the Holocaust is closely linked with national identity. Both countries turned from communist towards patriotic ethnic identity, or fought different versions of it. Since 1989, both Poland and Moldova went through the necessity of reconstructing their identities. And as Anna Maria Arlabukowska writes, post-communist countries needed to reactivate their identities. The communist state has been replaced by the nation, and it gives people stability and togetherness. The main challenge for them is to incorporate the minority Jewish memory narratives into their inclusive identity. Common European identity is another important factor which influences the Holocaust debates. Poland became part of the European Union in 2005. Holocaust is a part of European memory and European identity. Therefore, Poland is more open for both issues than Moldova, which is not a member of the European Union. So, Moldovan identity is still debatable and unstable, and therefore it is more difficult for Moldova to accept its tragic past and to let minority narratives to be part of it.
Thank you, Natasha, for this brief but very concrete presentation on the discourse of the problems with dealing with the past in Moldova and in Poland. I think we will have a lot of material to discuss that. Now we want to switch to the Baltic states and our...
...by the Administrative District Court. Foreign Minister of Latvia said then that it is clear that radical organizations use this day to escalate tension in Latvia. On March 16, anti-fascist activists from Austria, UK, USA, Germany and Latvia held a ceremony in the Liberty Monument in Riga and put bouquets of flowers there. Neo-Nazis who had their own rally at the same time damaged the flowers. This rally was attended by about 1,500 veteran legionnaires, their supporters and parliament members. In July 2012, the Latvian security police announced that no investigation will be opened on the desecration of flowers. On May 2012, Kaunas mayor decided that the remains of, I hope I pronounced the name, Josas Ambendicius, Rosales will be brought from Connecticut, US to Kaunas and delivered with honors. Rosales was held in the Ukrainian provisional government, which I mentioned before, which made several anti-Semitic decisions during its very short existence, including a decree to establish a concentration camp for Jews. The mayor explained his decision by saying that, and I quote, "Every state leader must be given state honor." The decision was supported by the Ukraine's foreign minister and culture minister and condemned by many others. But in spite of all the condemnations, the rebellion took place in May 2012. Several years ago, a new tendency appeared in Lithuania to try putting on trial Jews who fought in Soviet partisan units in Lithuania's woods during World War II Hashem and a prominent historian of the Holocaust in the Soviet Union. The Lithuanian General Prosecutor's Office had launched an investigation against Arad for allegedly killing civilians while he was a partisan. In February 2008, Avner Shalev, chairman of Yad Vashem, handed a letter of protest to the Lithuanian Prime Minister during his visit to Israel. In May, the Simon Wiesenthal Center sent an official protest to the Lithuanian authorities after it became known that 2 more investigations were being launched against former Jewish partisans. In September 2008, the prosecutor dropped the investigations against all 3 partisans. In February 2010, the Lithuanian Prosecutor's Office started another investigation against Yosef Melamed, at this time former inmate of the Kamens ghetto and head of the Association of Lithuanian Jews in Israel. As far as I know, this case was dropped as well. Property restitution is a controversial issue in those countries, also connected to the attitude toward World War II and the Holocaust. In October 2008, during the meeting with Rabbi Andrew Baker, Lithuanian Foreign Minister promised that the government would solve the problem of Jewish property in Lithuania. In 2009, the Lithuanian Justice Ministry prepared a draft legislation according to which the government will pay the equivalent of $46 million to the Jewish community. In July, the parliament decided to increase the amount to $50 million and the government approved the plan. However, in January 2010, possibly in light of the difficult economic situation, the Parliamentary Committee on Law and Order announced that it had to make sure that the compensation plan did not contradict the Lithuanian constitution, meaning trying to find a way to back out of the compensation plan. In April 2012, the Lithuanian government established a compensation fund of about $52 million, which supposedly will be distributed over the next 10 years. The Lithuanian Prime Minister said that this decision is an acknowledgement of the suffering of the country's Jewish community. The same issue is in Latvia. In June 2012, during her visit to Latvia, U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton talked with the local authorities about Jewish property. In response to what she said, there was a lot of negative reactions, like one said that, and I quote, "In order to give the Jews their so-called property, we need to enact a new law according to which the Jews are the chosen people and have more rights than Latvians, Russians, and any other." On June 20, 2012, Latvia's Justice Minister announced his resignation in protest of plans to offer restitution for Jewish property. On July 4, 2012, Holocaust Memorial Day in Latvia, where the Jewish community held a memorial service at the place where in July 1941 a synagogue filled with Jews was set on fire. A group of nationalists held a demonstration nearby against what they called the servants of the Zionists in the government and property restitution. Maybe I will end with some positive notes, that just so you won't think that everything is negative in those countries. In December 2006, the Latvian Foreign Ministry published a statement on its website condemning the Holocaust conference held in Iran several days before, and noted that the ministry rejects questioning of the Holocaust. A Reagan Museum launched an exhibition entitled Children of Latvia Against the Holocaust in August 2007, displaying school children's artwork about the Holocaust. The President, the Foreign Minister, and ambassadors of many countries attended the opening, which was reported also in the mass media. In Lithuania, in addition to the International Holocaust Memorial Day in January, the National Memorial Day of the Genocide of Lithuanian Jews is marked officially on September 23rd, the date the Vilnius ghetto was liquidated. In April 2009, a March of the Living took place for the first time in the Funari Woods. The ceremony was attended, among others, by Lithuania's president, Israeli officials, leaders, and members of the local Jewish community. Speaking to the participants, President Adamkus said, among other things, that the historical tradition of the two nations, Jews and Lithuanians, living together in peace was painfully tarnished by, and I quote, those who sought their consciousness by collaborating with the Nazis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irena, for this deepening views, especially in the case of Latvia and Lithuania, and some reflections also on the developments in the Ukraine, and for this little optimistic outlook. Now let me introduce our fourth panelist, that is our respondent, that is Małgorzata Pakir here from Poland. Małgorzata is an assistant professor at the Institute of Sociology at the School of Social Science and Humanities in Warsaw. She is the core exhibition project manager at the Museum of the History of Polish Jews. She received her PhD degree from the European University Institute in Florence, and her PhD thesis had the topic of German and Polish Holocaust cinema after 1989 and the construction of European memory. I think the book is expected to be published this year. It's already out. Yeah, you have it with you? Okay, Małgorzata is also the editor of the Peter Lang book series Warsaw Studies in Jewish History and Memory, and she will give us now a short response. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Well, thank you very much to all the presenters for really very, very interesting presentations that give us a lot of thoughts and facts and observations to think about the problem we are discussing here. I actually have a very difficult text now because I am the one who has to leave at 11, so I will try to make it short in 5 minutes so that we still have some time for discussion.
I think we could also open discussion, then prolong a little bit afterwards, after 11, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's okay. I liked very much the presentations because what they did, they showed the problem of anti-Semitism, Holocaust denial, broader intolerance and hate speech and acts, with focusing on the specificity of the East European region. So what all the speakers did, you tried to view it in the context of the post-communist nation-building processes, and I think this is the right perspective we should look at it. So Natalia showed how Moldova and Poland are dealing with the Holocaust memory by at the same time dealing with the national identities and the communist heritage. And then the two presentations on Latvia and the Baltic states, you also introduced the difficult and complex situation of the Baltic societies that also have they want to enter the Europe by becoming more multicultural and open societies, but at the same time they have to develop and to catch up with what was taken away from them before for so many years. And I think it is very necessary to look at this from this point of view, because there is a tendency to look at Eastern Europe as a worse Europe. I don't want to make it sound any nationalistly or anything like that, but just maybe to bring a different perspective. There are many analyses that tell that Eastern Europe is on a way of some kind of progress. of progress, of transformation, and that by following a model of memory cultures that have been created since the late 60s in Western Europe, they will in a few years become as open and liberal and democratic as the Western societies. And I think while this is the right perspective, it is also necessary to look at the complex situation, the complex historical experience, and the complex sociological and ethnical and cultural situations of those societies. So recently, the European Union has received the Nobel Prize for the Peace Nobel Prize, and what was, among others, commemorated there was how Europe has dealt with its dark past of World War II and the Holocaust. And we can see that, especially in the last 2 decades, the Holocaust has become some kind of negative foundational myth for Europe. So we have official commemoration days. The Holocaust is one of the main figures that appears in politicians' speeches, in education, museums, memorials. We have the Holocaust that is the main point and the main moral symbol. At the same time, a few years ago, there was a speech of the Latvian Foreign Minister Sandra Kalniete, who said that Nazism and communism were equally criminal regimes. It caused huge controversy, but what she actually said, she brought this issue of the Gulag memory, the memory of the victim who
used to live under the rule of the more powerful. Also, since the Holocaust took place so far away from our countries, they don't feel the same historical responsibility of confronting their past as the European nations. Therefore, for many, many years, combating anti-Semitism has not been an important issue in the political agenda. In the particular case of Mexico, intolerance is not based in religious basis like most people think. Recent studies performed by the National Council to Prevent Discrimination show that the most discriminated groups in Mexico are homosexuals, handicapped, and women.
The second one?
Handicapped people and homosexuals. Intolerance against the other, mainly those considered foreigners, is a popular trend. You know, you cannot be Mexican and Jewish at the same time. And anti-Semitism is mostly based on economic stereotypes and on left-wing oriented anti-Israeli arguments. We will hear now the lectures of the experts to understand what's going on in that part of the world. And afterwards, we will give the floor to Ana Tatar, member of the Never Again Association. We will begin with Luis Nazario. He has a PhD in history for the University of Sao Paulo with the doctorate thesis, Imaginaries of Destruction, the role of the image in the preparation of the Holocaust. After 3 years of research in Germany and Israel. Since 1997, he's a professor of cinema at the School of Fine Arts from the Federal University of Minas Gerais, and since 2002, he's a fellowship researcher from CMPQ. He has published more than 20 books, among them From the Nature of the Monsters, The Moving Shadows, Secrets, The Makers of Golems, Autos de Fe as Mass Spectacles. Since 1994, he's a contributor in Anti-Semitism Worldwide report from Tel Aviv University, and since 2006, he coordinates the project Cinema and Holocaust with the support of CNPQ. Please, Luis.
Yes, My English is not so good, so I will show some little clips, do not speak too much, and some disturbing clips. And after you can ask questions, okay? So first, I'd like to thank Cantor Center, all the people here. L'enfer, c'est les autres. According to Jean-Paul Sartre, it is often misunderstood sentence from his play Huis Clos, written during the occupation, means that our relationships with the others are not always bad and poisoned. The others, explains Sartre, are the most important thing in us. We depend on the others to know ourselves. But if my relationship with the others turns to a total dependence of them, I put myself in a hell. And there are many people in the world that live in a hell for depending too much on the judgment of the others. So for Sartre, the hell has many forms and each group can hate their own others and be hated by them in return. This intergroup hatred has not much to do with economic conditions, like in the Marxist theory, but with the simple fact of being in the world with others. We are all forced to live together inside a complex social net of interrelationships. The consciousness of itself tries to annihilate and suppress the consciousness of the other in order to feel more comfortable, especially when the other has a negative regard over me. Hegel wrote, each consciousness pursues the death of the other. Simone de Beauvoir made the sentence the epigraphy of her first novel, L'Invité, written during the World War II, about another war, permanent and invisible, the war of the consciousness. Bad economic conditions intensify the hatred of the others, but don't cause it. Necrophobia, xenophobia, xenophobia, Islamophobia, homophobia, all kinds of phobias, whose objects are a group of different people from the majority, are the main forms of the mauvaise foi, a petrifying choice made by people frightened by their freedom. And the reason is that freedom brings too many possibilities and responsibilities. The common man prefers a petrified lifestyle. He follows the majority. But soon he feels trapped in a hell for his own weakness. And trying again to feel good, he makes a hell to put the others there. The existential frustration from the people who choose an inauthentic form of life oriented by the external values from the majority is only relieved when they blame someone else for their own hell. The unhappy people, the majority, need to blame the others to get some satisfaction. Some of them, even more unhappy, need to hurt, to steal, and to kill their others to obtain satisfactions in many grades. The actions begin with insults. The depiction of Jews as parasites and rats in the Nazi regime, or as descendants of apes and pigs in the Muslim world, are the best examples. In Brazil, where the great majority, 86%, of the population are Christians, the most discriminated others are the homosexuals, followed by the women and the Jews. There are no relevant notices of physical aggressions against Jews in Brazil in recent years. But in the internet, Israelis and Zionists are hated as never before. In their blogs and sites, the leftists make always clear how much they hate with all their energies the state of Israel as a Nazi country that occupies, oppresses, and slashes the poor and innocent Palestinian people. Many leftists are recruited by the leftist regime to make propaganda in the net, and they are now assuming key functions in the state. According to the Map of Violence in Brazil, 2012, by Júlio Jacobo, the number of Brazilian women murdered grew 217% in 30 years. In 2010, more than 4,000 women were killed, the seventh greater index in the world. But the women are fighting back. The law Maria da Penha protects them against violence of their partners. We have our first woman president, the leftist Dilma Rousseff. and the number of women in the Brazilian government is growing. The gays have more difficulties to contest human rights than other minorities. One of the reasons is the impunity, which is normally big in Brazil, but bigger when the victim is a homosexual. In a world of machos, many gays prefer to remain anonymous. Many victims of violence avoid getting involved with the police and the justice. But the new technologies, like vigilance cameras in the streets and cell phones, has changed it. Now a lot of incidents are reported revealing how the homophobia is close in the streets. An example. The evangelical preachers associate homosexuality with the devil, and Pastor Edir Macedo, the millionaire owner of the Universal Church of the Kingdom of God, has shown in his privately owned television network how he has expelled, with a whip in hand, a gang of demons from a young gay man who wanted to liberate himself from the evil of the homosexuality. The gay community protests against this quite pornographic ritual. I hope it works. The other.
Yes.
Então, nós vamos ter agora o bispo fazendo o trabalho de libertação. E está pronto. Chegar de igreja, que entre eles sejam queimados, sejam queimados, sejam queimados, isso, queimados, sejam queimados, sejam queimados, sejam queimados, 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 queimados. Vamos te ajudar, Rodrigo. Vamos lá, vamos juntar força agora para queimar todos. Dá o chicote. Vamos lá. Desgraçado. E olha, presta atenção. Você que está nos assistindo, que está com um problema semelhante a esse, e quer se libertar, seja do homossexualismo, lesbianismo, da prostituição, qualquer que seja o problema que você esteja enfrentando, que você sabe que tem origem no inferno. Então, junte-se a nós. Põe as suas mãos sobre o seu computador, a televisão, ou o seu rádio, porque agora nós vamos fazer descer fogo. E o mesmo fogo vai pegar aqui, vai pegar esse desgraçado que está atuando na sua vida, que está fazendo você ser destruído. Nós vamos arrebentar agora. Nós vamos arrebentar agora.
E tem aqueles, bispo, que a pessoa quer vir à igreja ou quer voltar, mas não está conseguindo, porque eles estão amarrando. Eles vão ser queimados agora. E você vai voltar. Chegou a hora de você voltar, de você conseguir chegar até nós. Isso. Sejam queimados agora. Sobre todos vocês que estão aqui em suas casas.
O diabo seja queimado lá onde estiver. Satanás seja queimado lá onde estiver. Os principados, as potestades, os dominadores, as forças espirituais do mal, todo o inferno que tenha parado desse rapaz, da família dele, da casa dele e das pessoas que estão me assistindo também, sejam queimados todos os demônios que atuam nessa casa, nessa família, sejam destruídos todo o inferno da vida dessa gente que assiste, pela luz de Deus, pela rádio, pela rede aleluia, ou pela rede da família, em nome de Jesus, todo o inferno seja quebrado, queimado, e sangue essa
Observando, não? Vamos observando.
It's Arabic. So, Brazil shows more than 150 pride parades in a year and has the biggest association of lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transvestites, and transgender of Latin America. At the same time, is the world leader in killing homosexuals. 260 in a year. Mexico 35, 25. How are the Muslim countries together? 20 executions here.
Iran itself has more than 20.
Iran
itself has more than 20.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure because last year was 2. So
Publicly shown.
this is a media. So, as describing anti-Semitism not as an opinion but as a passion and a murder one, Sartre was the first intellectual to understand that tolerate anti-Semitic manifestations, groups or movements in the name of the freedom of speech could be fatal to democracies. Judophobia, xenophobia, homophobia, etc. are not mere opinions, but passions, and passions that can lead to murder. The fight for the rights of all minorities should be fight together, but there is a problem with the optimist vision of the minorities. Some of the minorities embrace freedom and fight discriminations inside this own group. Other minorities hate freedom and stimulate intolerance inside and outside the group. An oppressed minority in a place can be an oppressive majority in other places. The hatred of different others sometimes go together, sometimes not. There are many stones on the road taken by the multiculturalists, and they are not paying attention. The objects of hatred change from group to group, and no group is free from hating at least one another group, and some minorities are even more dangerous than the majority. We find xenophobia, negrophobia, homophobia, Islamophobia, and Judeophobia in neo-Nazi groups. Here, for example, a skinhead aggressed a black man and 2 women.
What is xenophobia?
Against women.
Vestido de camiseta preta, o skinhead provoca um jovem negro que está com 2 amigas na plataforma do metrô. Os dois começam a discutir. A namorada do skinhead tenta afastá-lo e é empurrada. O rapaz parte então para cima do grupo. Ele tira do bolso um soco inglês, coloca na mão e agride as garotas com golpes no rosto. Logo depois, corre atrás do rapaz e atinge a vítima na cabeça. Nesta outra imagem, uma das jovens tenta separar a briga e é atingida violentamente com um soco. A briga só termina depois da chegada de um segurança do metrô. A confusão.
It's a skinhead against 2 women and a black man.
This is frequent? Happens many times?
Not so frequent, but it happens. So, and recently, more. We find the same discrimination with us in the negrophobia in Brazilian nationalist groups. They kill gays but accept black men in their groups. Here, after an attack, a black man called the homosexuals a race from the devil. I hope it works. God created man and woman, not an homosexual. This is a race from them, from them. It's a black man. So, we find Judeophobia, xenophobia, homophobia in Islamic groups. We find xenophobia, homophobia, and anti-Zionist Judeophobia, even a Jewish anti-Israel group, the Neturei Karta. This group is regarded with good eyes by Iranian regime, which decides wanting to exterminate Israel, hang gays in public. As seen in the horrifying documentary Gays in Iran, the regime gives to Iranian gays just one alternative to death. Once they don't want to be men, they have to submit themselves to a surgical castration, changing their sex to be a woman, to be women. Because Allah created only men and women. Exactly that this black man said. Gays can only live openly in Iranian society after changing their sex. The American nationalist pastor Curtis Knapp of New Hope Baptist Church preached in 2012 that gay people should be executed like in biblical Israel. They should be put to death. That's what happened in Israel. Oh, so you are saying you should go out and start killing them, no? I'm saying the government should. They won't, but they should. Oh, I can't believe you. You are horrible. You are backwards, Neanderthal of a person. Is God a Neanderthal backwards in his morality? It's his idea, not mine. For Knapp, the homosexuals are a cancer that have to be removed from earth. Against Hollywood and corrupted medias and school, he prays for a national revival. He justifies this legal genocide in the basis of God's sentence at Leviticus chapter 20, verse 13. At the same basis, the evangelical church in Brazil moved campaigns against pornography in the net, same-sex marriage, and homophobia law projects. A pamphlet from the evangelical church against pornography in the net, digital threat, was distributed in 2010 at doors at the Federal University of Minas Gerais. The message was the students have to avoid pornography for the sake of their souls. They could do this by submission to God, or, if they can't, still dominate by the temptation, simply destroying their computers. So, the pornography is a monster. Behind the woman, there is a monster. And he decides to stop with that, this pornography, and destroy his computer. Other American nationalist Paul Richard wrote that Hollywood is controlled by a gay mafia. He pointed Sandy Geffen, Barry Deaver, and Sandy Gallin as the three dons of this mafia and blamed Jews and communists. The Disney studio has 5 top executives who are homosexual. Virtually all of the gay mafia are Jewish. Hollywood has been Jewish-dominated since its inception, yet most Americans are aware of that fact. Probably very few are aware yet of the rise within that subculture of a homosexual subculture to dominance. A nationalist government will regulate the media by ending the media dictatorship currently exercised by the radical left. Under the influence of this ideology, the Brazilian Josué Irion, who lives in USA, Maria de Fecuba Lumen, missionary in Spain, Africa, and Israel, accuses in his sermons the Disney company of spreading satanism and sensuality to destroy the children. He sees subliminal sex, phallic symbols, and homosexuality propaganda in King Lion, Aladdin, Little Mermaid, the Dalmatians, Pocahontas, and he incites the faithful to destroy Disney movies and videos. This clip has 5 minutes. Want to see? It's very interesting. It's very interesting.
Escute bem, num nível de bruxaria, satanismo, pornografia e espiritismo nos filhos da Disney. Eu somente vou dizer alguns nesta noite porque o tempo não permite, porque eu quero que a sua casa seja livre, como a nossa casa foi livre. Por exemplo, no vídeo de Marmaid, como se chama Marmaid, The Little Marmaid, aqui no Brasil? Lena Sereia, veja aqui, meu querido. Quero que você veja a capa da sereia. Se você parou para pensar e para examinar na capa, a coluna terceira, da mão direita para a esquerda, é o membro genital, o membro sexual. Esse vídeo de Little Marmaid é um vídeo de pornografia infantil.
He has a very good eye to see.
Há um grupo jamaicano falando palavras africanas para amaldiçoar a cada criança que está escutando o vídeo. Por exemplo, no vídeo de Aladdin, como se diz Aladdin? Aladdin. Se você para o vídeo em slow motion, devagar, você chama slow motion, você coloca devagar, você verá que ele diz tão rápido, mas você não pode entender. Ele diz, Gutine de se batizou. dois sentidos, roncado de espírito, ronco de espírito invocado ao loquismo. Você está chamando o diabo ao lado do seu lado e ao lado dos seus filhos. Isso que a Disney está ensinando. O espiritismo, o e proteção aos nossos filhos. Há um vídeo chamado The Lion King, o Rei Leão, a revista Time diz que é o vídeo mais sujo, mais perverso e carregado de violência que nenhum outro vídeo a Disney jamais produziu. Que as crianças que olham o Lion King hoje serão os assassinos amanhã. Foi um homem homossexual que já morreu de AIDS em Nova York. Se chamou John Smith. Ele que criou, segundo o filme, o leão que caminha afeminado. A música do Lion King é da nova era de Shirley MacLaine. Por isso as crianças ficam vidradas, porque a música é uma música do inferno. É uma música dedicada ao demônio. E se você para o vídeo de Lion King, o Rei Leão, o Leão Rei, em slow motion, como ele pega com as patas no chão, e as partículas do pó que se levantam no meio da televisão, forma a palavra sexo. Eu vou apresentar isso que você nunca viu na sua vida. É a reportagem do Dr. James Dawson, um programa chamado Focus on the Family, Enfoque a Família. Os livros deles estão traduzidos em português. Está a Mickey Mouse apresentando o último vídeo da Disney. Sabe que você quer saber o nome? Growing Up Gay, crescendo homossexual. Agora a Disney criou 2 Mickey Mouse homossexuais e 2 Mickey Mouse lésbicas. E nesse vídeo de Growing Up Gay, o porta-voz da Disney convida a todos os adolescentes homens a explorar o maravilhoso mundo da homossexualidade. Isso é Disney. Michael Eisner, o dono da Disney, de 60% das ações que ele tem, ele deixou a sua mulher em Burbank, perto da minha casa, na Califórnia, e se casou com um homem homossexual 3 meses atrás, no Disney World Orlando. Eu vou lhe dar um conselho nessa noite, em nome de Jesus. Você não sabe o que é Disney. É um enterro satânico, feito com uma assombrosa precisão para destruir a tua casa e para destruir os teus filhos. Vou lhe dar um conselho nessa noite. Destrua esses vídeos e salve a sua casa da maldição do dia de amanhã.
One more clip and I'm going to join you.
Destroy the computer, destroy the videos, destroy magazines. So this is an auto-defense. So the evangelical churches and nationalist movements are using now the same language of the Islamic preachers: Satan, demon, destruction, corruption. The left-wing movement supposedly against homophobia and Judeophobia assimilates this language too. In this form. All these groups have the same enemy. Hamas deputy minister of religions, Saleh Hikab, revealed it on Al-Aqsa TV. The goal of the Zionist movement is to establish a state in Palestine which would become a base for ruling the entire world. Its other goals are to destroy the religions it opposes, particularly Islam, to corrupt values and morality, to spread permissiveness and sects, and to generate moral decline. He names the destroyers of the religion and morality: the Jews, Durkheim, Freud, and Sartre. The founder of existentialism, which is based on atheism, is a famous French Jew. he insisted. The Egyptian priest Allah Said blamed, among other Jews of hell, the Jew Sartre for introducing the homosexuality in the Western world. Sartre. Who are the terrorists? They are the Jews. They spread the terrorism in the world. For Allah, I don't exaggerate. The brains of America were mutilated by Jews. The corruption was spread in the entire world by the Jews. They spread the abominable practice with the animals. Who did it and spread it, encouraging it and initiated it? The Jew Freud. The homosexuality, Allah pardon me. Who spread it? It was the Jew Jean-Paul Sartre. Who spread atheism in the world? Karl Marx was Jew. The Jews corrupted the French spirit with pornographic movies. You see, all the ideology is the same. The infamous language of the protocols, as the report studied by S.C. Webman pointed, is contaminating the world again. The gays, the weakest minority in Brazil, are now living in hell. Family hate at home, bullying in the schools, insults in the church, violence in the streets. Their hell made in evangelical churches and in fascist groups is similar to the hell made in Islamic states for gays, Jews, and women. And what Sartre has to do with this? He was neither homosexual nor Jew, but he gave to the world the first philosophy of the freedom. No intolerant individual, group, or state can bear such philosophy. Tolerance can be accepted because it seems fair and benefits at the end the majority and the intolerance. But freedom is frightening. Benefits only those who want to be free, not oppressing the weak. Depends on choices and not on rights. So, at each occasion, we have to choose a side and assume the risks and the consequences. So I let you with some images for a new word. Here's a gay kippah, gay in a priest, Islamic priest gay. The black Christ, Jesus, black Jesus. The first woman rabbi in Deutschland, in German, and he some gays with this traditional.
The Yemen gays, no? The Yemen gays.
Yes. There is a movie from 1 minute. It doesn't work here, but I can't show outside a moment. It's here. Because it's very impressive. I think it's here.
3 jovens caminham pela Avenida Paulista, centro financeiro de São Paulo, após deixarem uma festa. A poucos metros dali, os 5 agressores se aproximam.
These guys are gays, they left the party, and here there are five guys who hate gays. So,
Eles seguram 2 lâmpadas nas mãos. Sem nenhum motivo aparente, o jovem parte para cima do rapaz e o ataca na cabeça. A vítima parece atordoada quando é agredida pela segunda vez. Mesmo ferido, o garoto tenta se defender. As câmeras não conseguem registrar a confusão, mas minutos depois, 2 seguranças saem correndo para apartar a briga.
Two agents from the building. It was a lamp, fluorescent lamp, and without any problem, it aggresses. So the gays are suffering these things in Brazil. Okay, it's all.
Thank you, Liz, for the presentation. And I told you this was going to be a different session. Now we're going to listen to Lydia Lerner. She has an MA in International Relations by the Hebrew University of Jerusalem with a thesis definition of refugees in international law. She worked for many years in the Prime Minister's office in Tel Aviv, and she now works in Cantor Center specializing in Latin American and Spanish-speaking countries. She's going to talk about a very interesting and recent event. It's the anti-Semitism in the presidential campaign in Venezuela.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here. Okay. On October 7th, last October 7th, the Venezuelans went to the polls and re-elected Hugo Chavez for a third term as president of Venezuela. The elections were relatively close, with Chavez winning 54% of the votes to his opponents' 45%. The victory was described by many pro-Chavez circles as a victory over imperialism and Zionism. According to Jesus Moreno, a writer for the government-owned daily Diario Vea, the Venezuelan people defeated the feared international Zionism that used all its influence and all its money in order for Capriles to win. Much has been said about the political transformation Venezuela has undergone since Hugo Chávez's first election as president in 1998, and its impact on the country's tradition of cultural and religious tolerance. In a country where anti-Semitic manifestations have been rare, some claim practically non-existent, though I'm not that sure where there are Jews there is anti-Semitism, but manifestations were rare. Official attitudes in the country toward Jews, which until then had been positive, gradually changed to suspicion and hostility. Chavez and his government have denied charges of anti-Semitism and have attempted to make a distinction between their policy towards Israel and the Middle East and their attitude towards Jews in general. However, recent years have witnessed a rise in vandalism against Jewish targets, media attacks, stereotypic caricatures, and physical attacks on Venezuelan Jewish institutions. I would like to focus on one aspect of this phenomenon, the use of anti-Semitism as a political tool in the elections, in the presidential elections. Anti-Semitic manifestations surfaced for the first time during the 1998 election campaign. Following an abortive coup against Chavez in 2002, there was an escalation of anti-Semitic accusations by political groups close to official circles, as well as the media. Conspiracy theories, especially about alleged Israeli involvement in the coup, abounded in the official and semi-official press, expounded by figures linked to the government. Since then, there has been a persistent growth of anti-Semitic trends, partly in response to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the strengthening of Venezuela's economic and strategic links with the Iranian regime on the one hand, and increased hostility towards the US and Israel on the other, but also as a convenient scapegoat or pretext. Anti-Semitic messages feature in the publications of pro-Chavez and governmental circles, as well as the left. The tone is set by Chavez himself, who generally blames the Jews and the Israeli government for perceived injustices, such as his statement to the opposition leadership on August 25, 2004, a few days after his victory in a referendum aimed at ousting him from office. And I quote, "Don't let yourselves be poisoned by these wandering Jews." This trend reached new heights with the election on February 12, 2012 of Enrique Capriles Radonsky, a Catholic of Jewish descent, as opposition candidate to Hugo Chavez. Capriles comes from a wealthy family on both sides. His father was a Catholic of Jewish descent. He had a Jewish mother, and his father was a converted Catholic from an old Sephardic family. His mother's family were Holocaust survivors, and his great-grandparents died in Treblinka. Capriles does not hide his Jewish roots, but describes himself as a devout Catholic. Capriles represents the Democratic Unity Coalition, a collection of some 30 parties that compose the bulk of Venezuela's opposition. Although he himself belongs to the center-right party, Primero Justicia, Justice First, he describes himself as a moderate left. He served as mayor of the municipality of Baruta in Caracas during the attempted coup against Chavez, which took place in 2002. He was blamed for not using his authority as mayor to disperse demonstrators. In 2004, he spent 4 months in jail on charges related to the coup. In 2006, he was acquitted of the charge of fomenting violence, but there have been several attempts to reopen the case, so far with no success. In 2008, Capriles was elected governor of the state of Miranda. His political background, his links to the right-wing and conservative elements, his alleged role during the attempted coup, and most of all his family's wealthy background were all utilized by his opponents against him, but a significant place in their campaign was dedicated to Capriles' Jewish roots. Capriles' victory in the primaries gave rise to a blatant anti-Semitic campaign which exploits both classic anti-Semitism, such as Jewish stereotypes, Jews as capitalists who control wealth, media, etc., and new anti-Semitism, manifested mainly as hatred towards Israel and Zionism, such as the accusation that Capriles is a Zionist agent planning to overthrow the government and conquer Venezuela with the help of the Israeli Mossad. Anti-Semitic claims directed against Capriles are not new. In the past, he was repeatedly depicted in cartoons and caricatures wearing the Star of David and all swastikas and making the Nazi salute. During his campaign for governor in 2008, he was described by the Chavez-controlled media as a member of the Jewish Zionist bourgeoisie and genetically fascist. In 2009, at the height of the anti-Semitic activity in Venezuela, he was then governor. His house was surrounded by a mob led by a pro-Chavez mayor who chanted Nazi fascist and spray-painted red swastikas on his walls. On October 19, 2011, during his campaign to win the Democratic Unity primaries, the semi-official pro-Chavez news site Aporea published an article by Yoel Perez Marcano claiming Capriles' candidacy was part of a counter-revolutionary plot by international Zionism. The anti-Semitic campaign rose to new heights immediately following Capriles' election as the opposition candidate. On February 13th, Venezuela National Radio posted on its website an article by Adal Hernandez titled "The Enemy is Zionism," which was duplicated on many other sites. It made use both of classic and new anti-Semitic stereotypes. Hernandez argued that in order to understand the interest that I quote, that the candidate of the Venezuelan and transnational oligarchy, Capriles Radonsky, stands for, it is important to know what Zionism, the Israeli ideology that he deceitfully represents, is. Without a doubt, the ideology of terror, the rottenest feelings representing humanity. According to Hernandez, in October there will be two clear options for Venezuela. I quote, the Bolivarian revolution, which works for Latin American unity and the interests of the people, and international Zionism, which threatens the destruction of the planet we inhabit. Chavez himself did not mince words. On February 16th, at a medical graduation ceremony, broadcast live by all radio and television stations, he said, I quote, "It doesn't matter how many times you change your costume, low life. Your pig's tail still shows behind you as well as your pig's ears. You snore like a pig. Well, what am I saying? You are a pig. Don't try and hide it." Now, pig, chuetas, converse Jews, it's obvious. The anti-Semitic campaign against Capriles was opportunistic, using existing anti-Semitic bias and mobilizing anti-Semitic rhetoric for their objectives. The Jewish roots of the opposition candidate provided a convenient pretext to characterize the opposition as anti-national. It used tools such as defamation, maybe even demonization, intimidation, and conspiracy theories to warn the public of the consequences of an opposition victory. For example, examples of defamation. On the one hand, Capriles was accused of being Jewish, with all the racist characteristics that this entails, while on the other, his opponents repeatedly claimed he once belonged to an ultra-rightist Catholic sect called Tradition, Family and Property, which was accused of a perversive religious rites and practices, and after the TFP's disbandment to the Catholic fundamentalist Opus Dei. Such allegations were repeated many times by TV and all the media, including Chavez himself. Now, this is a clear case of don't confuse me with the facts, because Capriles could not have been a member of the TFP. He was a small child when he was disbanded. The apparent contradiction between Capriles or Ratowski, as he sometimes mockingly called on a play on his mother's surname, Radomski, the apparent contradiction between his alleged Christian or Buddhist and Zionist beliefs was explained by elaborate theories such as the historical analysis of the alleged collaboration between Nazis and Zionists before World War II against other Jews. There's a university professor called Emilio Silva who wrote an article an historical analysis very elaborate on the question. Capriles is also accused of hypocrisy. He disguises himself, I quote, as a Christian and prays to the Virgin for votes. In reality, he is a Zionist. He hates Jesus and the Virgin, tweeted Bassam Takeldine. Now, this is very obvious because Takeldine is a virulent anti-Semitic. He's a communist but comes from a Muslim family, so what the Jews and the Virgin to him, I don't know. He's the son of the Libyan ambassador, of the Venezuelan ambassador to Libya. Capriles is also accused of hypocrisy. He disguises himself as a Christian and prays to the Virgin for... in his column, A Grain of Sand, in the daily Diario Vea, Tony Valderrama lists those who would vote for Capriles in the election. First, he places Caiaphas, high priest of the tribunal which condemned Christ, stating, "This is a sure vote for Capriles since they all belong to the same miasma." Then he names Hitler, since they supposedly both belong to the same ideological movement. In another article titled How Capriles Radowski is trying to disguise himself, Carlos Lanz Rodriguez, advisor to the Education Ministry, also mixes traditional and contemporary anti-Semitism. He denies being anti-Semitic since Judaism is a chosen race or consecrated elite, not only for religious motives but for corporate interests. And when we denounce this racist and exclusive tendency, we are not subscribing to an anti-Semitic approach. According to Lanz, I quote, "Zionism as part of the empire will no longer need intermediaries. They will have Capriles Radowski as a spokesman agent." He accuses Capriles of wearing a disguise, asserting patriotic and religious symbols, and attempting to disconnect himself from his link with international Zionism by using the excuse of anti-Semitism against his denouncers. The public are also intimidated. They are continuously warned that a Capriles victory would inevitably be followed by a Zionist infiltration of Venezuela. Voters were also cautioned that Israel would have no choice but to intervene in Venezuela in order to guarantee that an Israeli citizen win any presidential elections. According to Julia Escalone, ambassador to the United Nations, this inevitable defeat will not be easily accepted. The Mossad has its own plans. On October 19, 2011, Aporea published an article by Joel Perez Marcano, Venezuelan ambassador to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, claiming the candidacy was part of a counter-revolutionary plot by Venezuelan Zionism, by international Zionism. A fifth column of the Israeli Venezuelan Zionist, a fifth column of the Zionist entity and international Zionism. To deceive the Venezuelan people and defeat Chavez and the Bolivarian Revolution. Another article pointed to the same site, stating that the impossible event of the government of Capriles and the opposition, those who govern will be the masters of the Zionist Yankee monopolies. According to sociologist Mariadela Villanueva, the candidacy of Enrique Capriles Radonsky is no more than the tip of the iceberg of the vilest Zionism capital, which aims to control and plunder Venezuela's and Latin America's immense wealth. The visit to Israel on May 12, in 2012, of Antonio Ledesma, mayor of Caracas, a supporter of Capriles, and his promise to restore diplomatic relations between the two countries was also used as proof of the Zionist plan. There are also conspiracy theories. Capriles is portrayed as a Zionist agent who will try to impose the Zionist war in the Middle East into Venezuela. He is repeatedly described as a candidate imposed on the opposition by the colonial Zionist Yankee Power Center in order to act against the country's interests in favor of the North American and the Jewish state. Several writers warned of the possibility of a Machiavellian plan by reactionary forces to assassinate Capriles in order to incriminate government servers and serve as a pretext for U.S. and Israeli intervention. Capriles is of Jewish origin. Tomorrow they may say that it was the Arabs who made the attempt on his life. To sum up, the upsurge in anti-Semitism in Venezuela since the advent to power of Hugo Chavez, which new heights with the election of Enrique Capriles Radonsky, a Catholic of Jewish descent, as opposition candidate to run against him in the October 2012 elections. Chavez and his supporters took advantage of Capriles' Jewish origin in order to vilify him and to warn of the dire consequences to Venezuela if he won. This was done by a variety of methods, such as defamation, intimidation, and conspiracy theories. Many of them portraying Capriles as a Zionist agent and to mixing classic and new anti-Semitism. A Capriles victory, it was claimed, will inevitably lead to Zionist infiltration. At the time of Chavez's election in 1998, the Jewish population of Venezuela numbered around 22,000. Today it has fallen to somewhere between 10 and 14,000. While immigration is largely due to the political and economic crisis the country is undergoing, increasing anti-Semitism also plays a significant role. Chavez's re-election will no doubt accelerate this process.
Thank you, Lydia. Now we're going to have some minutes for questions and answers, and then we'll give the floor to Anna.
I want to ask Lydia if the Capriles camp wasn't pushed to be such a situation that they had to react. No, he's not Jewish, he doesn't have pro-Israeli ties, and so on. Because in such a situation, the camp which is being accused somehow has to defend themselves. So did this party, this movement, this press try to somehow disassociate themselves from the accusations of Capriles, which may have a counter result in this sense? No, don't worry, we are not Zionists. On the contrary, to be with.
שבסוף כל כך.
Thanks for taking the time to chat. I remember yesterday we talked about how, or we heard that Putin in particular is very supportive of the Jewish community and hostile. Putin in Russia was very hostile, was very supportive of the Jewish community and hostile to anti-Semitism. And my understanding is that the relationships between Venezuela and Russia are relatively healthy. And I wonder if it's possible to use Putin's opposition to anti-Semitism as a way of influencing Chavez to be less overtly anti-Semitic.
It's again against about Venezuela. So most of the anti-Semitic manifestation propaganda that we see, it comes from circles that are close to the president, media, and newspapers. I have two questions to you. One, how does the fact that so many people in Venezuela support Chavez? How does it affect, and the fact that the Jewish community, and I'm sure that it's known, are basically against Chavez? So how does it affect the relations between Jews and Christians in Venezuela? I mean, that the fact that the Jews are mostly against such a popular president. And this brings me to my second question. What is your evaluation? How does the fact that Chavez was re-elected, how will it affect the Jewish community now, the relations between Jews and the general society, general population?
It's okay. I think you can hear now. Just two factors that I would like you to introduce into the Chavez picture. First, the influence on him as a young officer, a young man, of Norberto Serrasoli, the neo-Nazi Holocaust denier from Argentina, and the huge impact of the relationship with Iran.
Last question, please.
Just to follow, to elaborate a little bit more on the question of Shimon Samuels, the relationship between Iran and Venezuela, we know that they are very strong. We know that Iran propagates anti-Semitism as an official policy. So to what extent do you see the influence on Iranian anti-Semitism on what's going on in Venezuela today toward the Jews?
If I remember all the questions, we start with the Iranian question. Of course, Iran has a very big influence on Chavez, and we see whatever, and I already mentioned that, and of course, part of his policy against, part of his anti-Semitic policy, what he calls his anti-Zionist policy, is very much a result of the strengthening of his relations with Iran. Serrasoli obviously had a very big influence on him, though there were some attempts to disassociate himself from him, but obviously it's part of his psychological and historical and ideology view. Not only Iranian has influences his policy, but also the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He had, among his followers are many Arabs, many Venezuelan Arabs of Palestinian descent, and they obviously have a very big influence. And the oil question has a very big influence, and it obviously has plays a very big part. But it's not the only part, though it's a very important part. I also think that part of it is psychological, part of it is a result of his background. The Jews were the rich ones. He's a communist, but he obviously comes from a poor family, which were, I assume, traditionally Catholic. And every part, they all have a part in his psychological makeup. Now, the relations between the general population and the Jews. It's a very complicated situation. The Jews have met with Chavez on several occasions. There was a very big meeting about a year ago, and showed him a list of anti-Semitic events, and Chavez promised that no, we're not anti-Semitic, of course not, and we'll try to. He was also influenced by Castro, Raúl Castro, and his brother, of course, which suddenly came out against anti-Semitism, and they had a big influence, and he repeats he's not anti-Semitic, he's anti-Zionist. And of course we love the Jewish people, we very much respect the Jewish people, but on the other hand, the Jewish people, the Jewish community of Venezuela should also come out against Zionism and against the events in the Middle East and against Israeli policy in the territories, etc. Now there was another question of the Venezuelan, the relations between the general Venezuelan public and the Jewish community. On the whole, it's a good relationship. Obviously, the Jewish problem is not the main problem that the Venezuelan general public confront, and that's not what decides whether they vote for Capriles or for Chavez. 45% of the public did vote for Capriles, who is of Jewish descent. So obviously, it's not a question that determines their vote or their policies. On the other hand, the people who, especially the lower stratum, who follow Chavez, are obviously influenced by what he says, including by his anti-Semitism and his remarks. So while there's a rise in general anti-Semitism, I'm not sure that it's the entire public. It's usually the more populist circles which follow Capriles or which have Arab descent. Chavez, of course, and of Arab descent. What was the first question?
My question about Capriles, he says that I'm not a Zionist, I'm not a Jew. So how does this camp react to this kind of accusations?
No, they don't disassociate themselves from the... Because Capriles actually continuously says that he is proud of his Jewish heritage. He asked Chavez on one occasion to stop speaking about insulting his family, because he's proud of his family, he's proud of his heritage, of his great-grandparents who died in the concentration camps. He doesn't disassociate himself, and neither do his people. I haven't seen an attempt to say, no, we're against Zionism, just...
The Catholic Church relating to this?
I haven't seen a lot of. I don't think the Catholic Church as a whole. There are here and there, like everywhere, some anti-Semitic clergymen, of course, but I haven't seen the Catholic Church as a whole speaking against Jews. The question about Putin and Russia. I haven't seen Russia really take a part in that. Castro, on the other hand, like I said, is the one who really has much influence on Chavez, and he, interestingly enough, spoke against anti-Semitism.
Thank you, Lydia. And just to end this part of the session, Luis wants to say.
No, only remember that Chavez now has entered the Mercosur through manipulation with the help of Brazil and other countries, and the entire Latin America is going left, and I think it's a danger.
I'm not that sure that in Venezuela it's a question of right wing and left wing. I think it's a mixture of both.
Thank you, Lydia and Luis, for this interesting session. Now we're going to give the floor to Anna Tatar, who is a member of Never Again Association. Together with Marcin Portnak, the president of this organization, she works on hate crime monitoring. She's part of the editorial team of the Never Again magazine. She's a doctoral student. She studies in the section of comparative studies of the Faculty of Polish Studies at Warsaw University. And her presentation is an attempt at description of the racism, anti-Semitism, xenophobic related incidents committed in contemporary Poland, the experience of the Never Again Association. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I would like to tell you about hate crime monitoring that is provided by the Never Again Association. Unfortunately, I'm going to read. In Poland, no state-driven central system of monitoring offences linked to racism, xenophobia and neo-fascism has come into existence. Relevant data has been gathered and sorted by governmental organizations and law institutions unsystematically and in many varied ways without actually evoking appropriate definitions and categories of violence. Agencies responsible for national security have failed to publish reports on racist offences and threats that the far-right microphone. It's better now?
Put the computer thing down because we can't see your face as well.
But I need it.
Oh, you need to put it on your lap.
You prefer face?
Of course.
Too many interests.
Is it okay now? No? Thank you very much. So, agencies responsible for national security have failed to publish reports on racist offences and threats that the far-right extremists pose. Neither do the police prepare regular reports, nor they collect news that could help pinpoint certain tendencies and provide a base for a public discussion about the problem of racism and neo-fascism. The majority of Polish non-governmental organizations also fail to carry out regular monitoring of incidents and offenses they charges fell victim to. In their actions, they try to work against social antagonists and collect information about who the victims and perpetrators typically are. They do so as to be able to carry out their tasks and campaigns better, more effectively. Typically, they limit their monitoring to some selected cases and touch upon victims from a particular group with a view to encouraging law enforcement institutions and relevant state institutions to act. Also, non-governmental organizations attempt to inform the public about these incidents. Never Again Association has been monitoring racist and xenophobia-linked incidents and offenses committed by neo-fascists in Poland for many years now. In 2009, we published this brown book, and it documents incidents from 1987 to 2009. And in 2010, we published brown book. It contains incidents from 2009-2010, and we are preparing the third part of the brown book. These titles remain the most extensive and reliable study of racist and neo-fascist violence in Poland, and it is also published in Never Again magazine, as well on the association's website, also in PDF in English. The books are frequently consulted by the media, international organizations, and think tanks. Collaboration with the media remains an important facet of the Never Again activities, as it allows for reaching the public, promoting anti-racist attitudes, and lobbying relevant state institutions. The Never Again Association contributed to the creation of a few thousand features, TV and radio programs, documentaries, books, and bachelor's, master's, and doctoral theses devoted to the phenomena of racism and neo-fascism. So, monitoring is used for educational purposes. It also helps to intervene in particular cases and increases the level of social awarenesses. How we do it, how we monitor. Events monitored by Never Again can come under the term hate crime, which is gaining popularity in both the academic circles and the media. In accordance with the definition provided by the Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, hate crime is an offense against an individual or a group of individuals committed on grounds of their actual or presumed belonging to particular race, nationality, ethnic origin, language, skin color, religion, gender, sexual orientation, age, mental, physical disability, etc. However, the definition raises some issues. Due to its lack of exactness, various monitoring institutions take the term to denote different social phenomena. What is more, it fails to capture verbal abuse, social exclusion, and institutional discrimination that often occur for the above-mentioned reasons. In Poland, the use of the term is still fairly rare. And thanks to the network of correspondence and collaboration established with minority and non-governmental organizations, Never Again Association maintains the most extensive and reliable register of violence, this kind of violence. The filling of monthly reports on the activities of local neo-fascists is a key importance. So systematically sent accounts remain vital to regular monitoring. If no incidents take place, a correspondent is still expected to pass the information. Lack of news is also helpful in this case, as in the long run it allows for capturing certain tendencies. For example, the weakening of the far-right movements in a given area. Correspondents may utilize varied sources of information, the local media, often broadcasting in a given area and containing information not covered in the national media. They can establish contact with local minority organizations and use data they amass. The association often gets first-hand information about events witnessed by its volunteers. Every note should include the following details: date of an incident, place, detailed description of an incident, who the victims and perpetrators were, what did they look like, what did they say and what did they do, were they seen by anyone, did the police intervene. All personal information sent by a correspondent to the Never Again is not disclosed to third parties under the Polish law. Correspondents also send leaflets, brochures, stickers, books, links to articles with racist and neo-fascist content, photographs, graffiti on the wall. They also include clippings from local newspapers concerning incidents. And now I would like to show you some incidents and our notes, how we describe it. I have one example from each categories. I'm not going to tell you the definitions now. It should be noted that the clear, isolated situations that fall within one category are very rare. Most of the time, perpetrators' motives are complex and the meaning of terms that are used to describe them overlaps. In its monitoring, Never Again aims to identify a leading tendency as a criterion for cataloging incidents and offenses. First one is racism, and at the beginning of October 2009, a racist incident took place in one of the Biedronka chain food stores located in Wieniawska Street. A checkout assistant and a security guard accused a customer of Roma origin of shoplifting and an attempted payment in counterfeit money. As the man protested, the checkout assistant called him every black person is a thief. Police officers who arrived at the scene interviewed witnesses and reviewed CCTV footage just to establish that no shoplifting or counterfeiting had been attempted. The accused, Bogdan Szczerba, a member of the Roma Men Association, said he was going to report the case to the prosecutor office. So, the shop assistant in Lublin accused the person who had a non-white, non-normative skin color of shoplifting. Due to the client's different looks, she treated him with dislike and broke the law by accusing him of deeds he had not committed. Similar racist incidents triggered by people's different characteristics are most common in Poland. And the second one, group of incidents, neo-fascism, Wrocław. On 2nd April 2008, the streets of the city were flooded with stickers that the allegedly fascist party, the National Rebirth of Poland, lent its name to. The stickers read, "Hang up your MP. Does he vote in Poland's disfavor and for Euro Constitution? May this loose be hanged on a wall, pole or lamp post." As usual in the case of National Rebirth of Poland actions, the sticker used a play on words using some bloody associations. This time it called for hanging people. The case of the National Rebirth of Poland action had earlier been investigated by the prosecutor's office in Wrocław after the party published a poster reading, "Fascism, we are worse." So in this, the stickers distributed in Wrocław contained the Nazi and anti-Semitic message and called for hatred based on race. The Nazi ideology was the basis for such behavior. The third one, neo-Nazism, also in Wrocław. On 3rd April 2008, the local Lower Silesian supplement of the Gazeta Wyborcza Daily once again described facts pointing to the existence of neo-Nazi sympathies among some fans of the Śląsk Wrocław Club. The web portal Wrocławianie Info one of the biggest and most popular sites linked to this club, circulated several dozen stickers, of which some contained racist and anti-Semitism slogan and drawings, Hitler's figure giving the Roman salute against the background of the Śląsk Club. Slogans Skinheads Hooligan 88 and Zero Tolerance, along with a Ku Klux Klan member in a characteristic pointed hood pointing to the crossed out Star of David, and a caricature of a black man. 3 men in combat shoes keeping a line black man sign, "This is how the nobility of Wrocław amused themselves." The stickers appeared regularly in trams all over the city. The prosecutor's office in Wrocław investigated the case. And anti-Semitism, Gardzinica, on the night of 12-13 September 2008, on the wall the drama workshop center Gardzinica, an unknown person painted the Star of David on the gallows and signing it "Juda Raus." 2 weeks later, during the performance entitled Gardzinica's Universe, a 10-person group of neo-fascists appeared in front of the building chanting "Down with Jews." Another anti-Semitic incident was aimed at the artists of Gardzinica and came about on the night of 7-8 October. Unknown perpetrators vandalized the central grounds, causing major financial losses. The police managed to apprehend one of them. He turns out to be a 25-year-old resident of Gardzinica. As the man explained at the police station, he had intended to express his opposition to the presence of 2 individuals of Jewish origin in the village. At the same time, he said he regretted what he had done. He was ready to accept the penalty and fill an appropriate petition. For incitement to racial hatred and property damage, he was likely to face a sentence of up to 5 years in prison. This perpetrator openly pointed to anti-Semitism as a driving force. Due to the presumed Jewish background of the artists from this theatre, the place was vandalized a few times. The remaining perpetrators called for hatred during the performance. And 2 more categories, and it will be enough. Xenophobia. In Białystok on 29 February 2008, the Never Again editorial team was informed that anti-Russian inscriptions, among others Ruski show-off, had appeared in a few places around the city. People who informed us about the xenophobic incident were members of the local Russian Cultural and Educational Society. Okay, and the last category, homophobia. In Warsaw on 9th June 2009, campaign against homophobia informed the Never Again magazine about 2 crimes triggered by hatred for people with different sexual preferences. A gay woman who wished the name of the city remained undisclosed received some threatening phone calls. In addition, someone attempted to burn her car. When she reported the fact to the police, they said she did not provide sufficient evidence to initiate investigation. The second incident took place on 13 May in Gdańsk, where a transsexual person was verbally abused by a police officer on duty. Campaign against homophobia filed a complaint about the officer's behavior. These incidents committed in Warsaw based on the victim's normative sexual orientation. In both cases, the police reaction requires attention. It was indifference of hostility towards non-heterosexuals. And summing up, I would like you to tell you about the group of victims. Among them, there are immigrants, refugees, foreigners visiting Poland, people of national minorities, Roma, African, Chechen, Jewish, Vietnamese, Ukrainian, Russian. In Poland, non-Polish football players are often exposed to neo-fascist attacks based on their different skin color and nationality. Bananas thrown on the turf and racism shots directed at them are the most typical manifestation of such activities. Second group, people of religious minorities, Jewish, Muslim bodies and others. Vandalized cemeteries, most often Jewish ones, and racist inscription on sacral buildings, typically synagogues, are typical examples of action aimed at this group. The third one, feminists, environmentalists, gay people. They are often attacked during their manifestations, for example, equality marches, outdoor concerts, and modern art performances. People with disabilities. In the opinion of the far-right extremists, they are substandard element. Also, they are discriminated against in various state institutions and public places. Alternative youth. They express their divergence from the mainstream social behavior by means of atypical appearance. Racists often resort to violence when dealing with them. Neo-fascists consider them to be a substandard element, slopes, and worthless poles. And the last categories, the homeless, attacks against this group remain a major and yet often ignored problem in Poland that is overlooked in hate crime monitoring. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna, for sharing with us the important work you do, and I would like to ask if you have any questions.
Can you give us some details about who supports your organization? How do you operate?
We have collaborated with it is a German institution, and now we collaborate with Fundacja Battery Foundation from Poland.
How is your It's okay. How is your cooperation with the officials, with the police? I mean, it's nice that you have such a resonance by initiatives and projects and NGOs who are announcing, or by the victims by themselves, that they announce all these incidents. But probably it's important just to mix it up with the results by the officials. Is the police ready to provide you substantial information, or do you have rather negative experience?
We have been collaborating with police. We organized workshops. We have been organized it for 3 years, mostly before the Euro, and after Euro we are going to do the same. We met with the police on some conferences. We are talking about the victims, how to treat them, how to recognize the symbols, and our cooperation is getting better. For example, such incidents like in Warsaw, that policeman offends a homosexual woman, it's not as often as in the past.
How many are you?
How many are we? It's hard to say. Several people collaborate with Never Again constantly, and we are the network. We have volunteers in all Poland, also abroad, and they contact us in various ways, by media, telephone. We meet, or just we meet once every 2 years. It depends.
Your organization has members your organization has members among the Jews and Christians as well.
Yes. We collaborate with the Jewish minority from the editor's team of Słowo Żydowskie, who is at
the Jewish and the Christian through the church, through the schools. Where do you have members, supporters, from what category?
We try to collaborate with various minorities, religious minority, national, sexual minority. In Poland, it is hard to find people from minorities.
The ones suppressed or the other part? The part which is suppressed or the others who are not totally?
Yes, it's mixed, yes.
Okay, thank you. And the last question.
Okay. Thank you. Are you?
It doesn't work.
Works now.
Are you aware on the European initiative about Equinet? And does Poland is part of this initiative? Equinet, the quality bodies that will have a statutory, let's say, status, and you can do monitoring and legislation and going to the court in behalf of those who suffer the homophobia, etc.
We just monitor it. It's not our work to go to the police, to go to the court.
I know, but I just ask if Poland is part of this initiative in the EU.
Mike, are we?
You are, in theory.
I wasn't going to interject. I actually did a training session for somebody from your Justice Ministry and a senior policeman in the context of the police training that I'm doing in Berlin for the German police and the German armed forces. And the Polish government sent last February these two officials. Interestingly, the policeman, who's a very senior policeman, the regional commander, is of Asian origin. And so I was training him for a day in monitoring hate crime. Oh yeah, I was there too.
Yeah. That process will continue, but I'll talk a little bit about it when I do my thing this afternoon.
Thank you very much, and now we're going to lunch. Before lunch, just a word about the chairperson. Our chairperson is Renee Chabot-Dayan from Mexico. She's director of Tribuna Israelita. It's a Mexican Jewish institution that deals with anti-Semitism and relations of the community with mass media, intellectual and religious groups, and she has been a member and a friend and a colleague for many years now. Lunch is until 2. And please bear in mind that tomorrow we still have 2 more sessions, yeah? Tomorrow is 9:30 in the morning. We will go to work together with this presentation of the day.
10 minutes only.
9:30.
Sorry, are you having lunch? Yes.
Andrei.
because it always improves my stance and my ability to do a speech. Ladies and gentlemen, a friend friends, colleagues. First of all, thanks very much to the Mashikator Institute and the Never Again Association for having me here. It's an honor. For the last 17 years, I've been immersed in the removal of anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial from the internet, although making that distinction these days is somewhat of a meaningless thing. Internet and the real world have become an integral part of each other. But it seems that for the 17 years I've done this work, I've watched every site, every nasty remark, every horrible video, defamation, trivialization of the Holocaust, every myth people can think of. And some stand out in my mind, since they were so vile and ugly: the Prussian blue twins, Links and Lamb, the Auschwitz video in which the Shoah was transformed into a dance party, the Leute report, das Rudolf-Gutachten, ethnic cleansing, the game, Stormfront, the protocols, cartoons, thousands of cartoons, hipster Hitler, and increasingly, it's also the case that your average blog reply, newspaper talkback, web forum discussion, and Twitter and Facebook and social media, they're all more and more mainstreaming anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial. No longer is anti-Semitism something that is only to be found on Nazi sites. So what we've done is removal, and we can really dream it by now, and it works. It really works until the next 10 minutes or the next day. And the internet, that great big recycling machine, of all we find important, funny or interesting, has also become the best repository for hate imaginable. Still, our policing the digital streets has not been for nothing. Every instance of hate we removed was no longer seen or potentially not seen, sometimes for a shorter, sometimes for a longer time. We have been the restrainers of the propagation of hate, preventing hurt, potential hurt, and confusion. That's something to be proud of. Since 10 years, we did this together with the colleagues, some of them here present, united in the International Network Against Cyber Hate. And the figures over these 10 years, we think, are very impressive. Over those 10 years, our 20 member organizations in 19 countries received more than 100,000 reports about cyber hate and succeeded in having more than 50,000 hate sites, comments or postings removed, of which about 52% were of an anti-Semitic or Holocaust denial nature. Additionally, more than 55,000 websites were monitored by us. So it is waiting for a Nobel Peace Prize, at least we deserve it. In 1995, when the internet was still truly a global village, really very small, a few 100,000 people online, we were triggered by the online postings of Nazi song lyrics on a Dutch text-only service. Now, in 2012, that would be the least of our worries. Our removal figures are impressive, but seen in the light of the enormous hatescape that has been created, it's really nothing. In my home country, there's a saying, carrying water to the sea. Those are really silly people who do that. That's how our work feels at times, but we are not asking the police to cease their work since crime does not go away. We know that human nature will not allow us to get rid of hate. We also know that the removal of hate is only a defensive act. It still needs to be done to stem the tide as much as possible. It is in the short term a good way to clean up, to help victims feel less victimized, and it sends a message: there is freedom of speech, that some speech is bad for society, leads to violence, and can ultimately destroy our democracies. Removal by several means is also relatively easy. I know that if I don't talk a bit about our data for the Netherlands, at least Roni will be somewhat sad. So, just yesterday afternoon, I had to miss the last session of the conference, since I was called away to take care of a particularly nasty list of names of Jews and assumed Jews in the Netherlands, posted on a Muslim web forum, accompanied by threatening remarks. In short, Anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial on the Dutch part of the internet is alive and well. The somewhat longer version of that, during the last 5 years, anti-Semitism and hate against Muslims were in competition for a first place on our list. 1 year anti-Semitism winning, the other year hate against Muslims winning. You see that we also don't use Islamophobia, which we think is not a very precise term to describe hate speech, and it suggests hate speech against the religion, Islam, which is not illegal at all. Anyhow, the data. Between 2007 and 2011, our Dutch Bureau received in total 7,603 complaints, of which 1,732 concerned anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial. About half of the material that was reported to us was indeed illegal according to the Dutch Penal Code. 75% was removed after we sent a request for removal. Of the remaining 25%, we filed some 10 cases with the prosecutor's office, resulting in 9 convictions. Still, we know we are dealing with the proverbial tip of the iceberg. Looking around on the Dutch language part of the net, we see thousands more instances of anti-Semitism every year, but those do not get reported to us. We don't have the capacity to go after all these instances. Right now we are engaged in 3 court cases against one individual in the Netherlands, a former lawyer, convicted a few years back for threatening the Dutch Prime Minister. This person, who calls himself an anti-Zionist, posts more than 100 anti-Semitic rants on his own websites each month, and he's also an obsessive Holocaust denier. We are not counting all the instances of anti-Semitism he produces. That would result in incorrect data, since he's only one person. It illustrates, however, that the problem is huge, especially for a small country like ours. So we carry more water to the sea. But somebody has to do it, and on a scale from bad to worse, the Netherlands is not really so bad. Many countries are worse. Sadly, we cannot rely on politicians and international bodies to stop online hate. Despite the rise of the extreme right, the re-entrance into politics of National Socialists in Hungary and Greece, despite the enormous growth of neo-Nazi groups and parties in Germany, on and off the internet, despite more anti-Semitic hate crime, anti-Semitic attacks and murders by extreme Islamists in France, politicians seem to not see the need to come down hard on the rebirth of National Socialism in Europe, if they ever will. Talking about ugly trends, we note another one. While in the past, anti-Zionist or anti-Israel propaganda and rhetoric often was on the edge of anti-Semitism, also depending on how it was assessed, with the law book in hand or by using the working definition of anti-Semitism, increasingly this kind of speech is dropping all masks and is becoming openly and virulently anti-Semitic. We say education, but education is not the silver bullet. We have lots of education to offer, all of us, but there are no longer enough takers, in my view. While the world is full of Holocaust museums, memorials, and educational programs, exhibitions, booklets, digital lessons, and testimonials, while by now a library has been written about the Shoah that is enormous and is on the internet, school kids have very meager knowledge about it all. They will know about World War II in the same sense that we know about the French-Prussian War of 1870, vaguely. They may have heard the word Holocaust, and they may know about Hitler, an awesome, cruel guy. And some of their Muslim peers will know about the Holocaust, as that story made up by Jews to be able to play the victim and steal Palestine. So while educators avoid the subject altogether or just do what they can, kids look to the internet for answers. After all, it's an integral part of their world, more so than ours. They grow up with it, and critical thinking, assessing and analyzing information is no longer taught on a broad scale. School kids pick and choose what is needed for their work. Many school paper these days cites Holocaust deniers as credible sources, and the problem does not stop there. Even university students, and some of their professors, I have found out, have developed laziness and a short attention span, and copy and paste myths and disinformation found on the internet without checking sources. An extremely worrisome trend. There are many attempts in the works to engage the problem in a different way. Some of us are talking to the internet industry, and our international network has just launched its Internet Common Values Charter, which lists, for those who sign, a number of common values and goals to make the net better. The charter is aimed at all internet actors, including industry, and can be found at charter.inet.net. Our colleagues at the Interparliamentary Coalition for Combating Anti-Semitism, ICA, are also engaging with social media, and that seems to go pretty well, although with some of the actors better than others. During the past few days, our member bureaus in France, Germany, and the Netherlands complained about the unwillingness of Twitter to remove any hate speech, while they have no problem removing child pornography on request of our German colleagues, for instance. Twitter is fast becoming the #1 facilitator of internet hate speech, and although Facebook has its problems, notably their freakish stance on what they call non-hate Holocaust denial, at least they take action on some of the hate speech issues. Most of our members have good contact with Facebook in all the regions of the world where they are, and a lot of times they comply and remove if we ask them, but not in any case, as we can see from Andre's report. The main problem, going back to Twitter, is that you can hardly file a complaint with Twitter. All complaints have to be lodged, or can only be lodged by law enforcement, for which Twitter has a special interface. Worse even, if you are not American law enforcement, you can't complain at all. Both the Dutch public prosecutor and the Dutch police have tried it at our request. It's a no-go. It's a no-go. This is why all the highly anti-Semitic and inciting tweets done by a young Dutch person who could be identified through other means and was arrested for possession of firearms and explosives are still online. All his material is still there. Twitter just doesn't care, to use a decent word. Yesterday I understood from Mike Wine that Twitter, during talks with the ICCA, chose to disappear when it was time to sign agreements. That sums it up, I would say. And this morning I saw that also ADL issued a press release about the Twitter situation. Now, all this work we're doing is valuable and needed, but to be more effective and detect the problem at its roots, we need to look beyond removal of hate. 5 years ago, during a speech for the Global Forum on Anti-Semitism, I was asked by members of the audience what would work, what they could do. And I said at the time, go out and counter bad stuff. Go online in your free time and fight it. Well, I'm happy to say that by now this has become a strategy and countermeasures, with as a main component counter-speech and another component positive campaigns. While we were still developing our ideas for counter-speech, the National Union of Israeli Students started such a project, supported by the ministry, Gilon Menar's department. Not long after this, the Youth Department of the Council of Europe followed, and immediately after, the EEA Norway Grants Group. So a critical mass has developed for trying to implement counter-speech, an ID, which a number of funds said to us 3 years ago that they did not see anything in it since the results would not be measurable. Partly this is true. We think counter-speech has great potential and is already showing results. Potential not only to debunk anti-Semitic myths and Holocaust denial, but also to engage and recruit more people to become active online and to show in a positive way that we all can do something, either organizational or individual. We are not talking about engaging Nazis or other anti-Semites. Those are too far gone and will not change their minds. There is, however, a growing group on the internet of those who are clueless, who have just formed the wrong opinion based on incorrect information, and those who are really on the edge of becoming anti-Semite. These are the people we want to reach by several methods. Our very early attempts in 1996 showed us that counter-speech can work, that you can convince people who have not yet made up their minds by talking, by putting a lot of time and energy in this, but also by giving the positive examples, by presenting facts, by debunking myths. It works. As also the results of the Israeli Student Union show, they've been at it now for a year, and it's going very well. By the way, they will double, they are now working with 35 activists, and they will double up to 70 probably next year, I hear. I'm proud to say that I played a small part in their training, as I also do in the training sessions for the young activists from the Council of Europe Youth Department project, which will start its work next year. Last month at our annual conference in Berlin, we had all players together, and we are talking about mutual support and the exchange of experience and knowledge. And later next year, my own organization, the Gender Foundation, plans to do a training session for youth and students in which we plan to involve all those who right now work with counter-speech. So this is what we will be spending our time on. It all began with words, and we have secured good words. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Ronald. This is again a good opportunity to thank the Magenta Foundation for its excellent work in combating hate on the internet. We first met during the beginning of the combat against the boycott against Israel. And I know that since then you really did a wonderful job. It helped so many groups and organizations to understand the risks of the net and how to counter hate on the internet. Our third speaker is my friend Dr. Chaim Waldner. Chaim is a researcher of various different fields, and his main expertise actually is the urban and the social and cultural history of the civic society of the Yishuv. Mainly Tel Aviv Jaffa, and the relation between daily life during the War of Independence, which is not going to speak about today, and the security issues. And his book is forthcoming, and now he's working on the history of the Haganah, the paramilitary main organization of the Yishuv. In the campus center, he served as the head of research programs. Now he's also involved in doing the research on immigrants in Germany and in UK. And besides all these fields, he is also dealing with monitoring hate on the internet, mainly anti-Semitism, because this is our field. So let us hear Chaim, please.
Thank you very much.
I
have very decisive. Before I click the stopper to start the 35 minutes I got from warning. One anecdote, because yesterday my colleague Carol asked me, oh, it was an interesting paper I read that you gave me, but what it has to do with internet? And this morning I got asked by Ronnie during breakfast, you forgot to mention something about the internet and your resume. And it struck me that what is for me natural, that life today is the internet and it's not a virtual reality anymore. That everything is done on the internet and everything that is going, particularly when I'm talking about wars of ideas, it's only in the internet today that I didn't even think that I have to mention it very specifically, but it's in the lecture. So I start. It achieved its independence in 1948, liberated from a long period of British rule. From then on, it was involved in bitter wars against the indigenous population of the country. In the years to come, almost 70,000 people lost their lives. It is said that around 800,000 persons was forced to displace, many of them living in refugee camps or fleeing their homeland and now displaced in many diaspora communities throughout the world. No, what I was just describing was not about Israel and Palestine and the ongoing bloody conflict between Jews and Arabs in and about the Holy Land. It's about Sri Lanka. And the bitter civil war recently folded. Despite so much human suffering and so many years of bloodshed, the United Nations General Assembly provided only 48 resolutions concerning the disputes in Sri Lanka, and that the United Nations Security Council agreed on 0 decisions about it. In comparison, the Israel-Palestinian conflict issued 508 resolutions of the General Assembly and 51 decisions of the Security Council. Almost 10 times more, 1,000% more. A basic search for documents concerning the two conflicts in the United Nations archives would provide the Israel-Palestine armed conflicts with 16,800 results compared to 2,680 results for Sri Lanka's civil war, about 6.3 times more. Here we have two conflicts. But when one Google Israel and Palestine, you almost get twice as many results than for Sri Lanka. The Tamil Tigers gets only 2,600,000 results in Google compared to 21,300,000 results for the PLO. And for Googling Sri Lanka and apartheid, one gets only 490 results in comparison to 2,780,000 results when Googling Israel and apartheid. Two brief lessons from this description. A, the ordinary person like me has only insubstantial information on major conflicts, especially if he is not personally involved in it. And B, the Israeli-Jewish-Palestinian-Arab conflict is very popular and raises more interest and more emotions than many other arguably comparable issues. The reasons for the latter are not going to be discussed today. We should accept it as an axiom. But it is essential that we could supply people with balanced and accurate information about the conflict, the kind of information that would help them to develop a critical approach in analyzing biased information and distorted narratives about the conflict. Why is it so important to meet narratives with good, positive historical? The answer in this lies deep in the roots of what is recognized and defined as new anti-Semitism. Its essence is the distortion of the image of Israel, Zionism and their supporters as a crucial stage in achieving the opponent's goals, whatever they are. New anti-Semitism depicts Israel and its supporters as an embodiment of the ultimate evil, while using all the traditional characteristics of anti-Semitism and even worse, by distorting history and falsifying narratives. There is no better document to assert this point than the working definition of anti-Semitism that was adopted by the EUC in January 2005. that the distorted history of the Israeli-Palestine conflict is a very complicated issue. In order to achieve certain political goals, it contains many layers of twisted narrative and manipulation of facts. In the 80s and the 90s were the high days of postmodernism, and it was very common to blame Zionist historians in writing one-sided history in the best case, or in faking history of the conflict. The death of positive historiography was declared, and it was substituted by the emergence of the narrative. In such case, there is no more authorized body of knowledge and people that will judge and rule on the right and accurate history. Positive history that is based on strict professional academic standards was placed by marketing idea by narratives. And the cyberspace is where they are flourishing. Of course, there is no way to discuss all narratives and their vicious mutations during this presentation. And the full paper will be on the internet, Bezrat Hashem, next week on the Cantor site. So let us concentrate on the utilization of several of the principal narratives that are used by the BDS movement. Their slogan is freedom, justice, and equality, but not truth, in order to achieve their goals. In July 2005, almost 12 years after the Oslo Accords were signed, and with the reduction of the fights with Israel known as the Second Intifada, Palestinian civic bodies and their supporters issue a call for BDS. Every word was carefully chosen in order to plant the seeds of the narrative. After mentioning that Israel continues to expand Jewish colonies, it's a quote, in the West Bank, it declared, among other things, 57, and this I quote it because it's very crucial about the narrative of the BDS. It's not about the West Bank. 57 years after the State of Israel was built, mainly on land ethically cleansed by its Palestinian owners, a majority of Palestinians are refugees, most of whom are stateless. Moreover, Israel's entrenched system of racial discrimination against its own armed Palestinian citizens remains intact. And because Israel persistently violates the international law, the endorsers of the call suggested embracing the tactics that, and quote, exemplified in the struggle to abolish apartheid in South Africa through diverse forms of boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. And again, I want to remind you that it's not about the West Bank. From the above, one can understand that the pillars of BDS narrative would be three: colonialism, racism, and apartheid in every area that is considered Palestine by the Palestinians and their supporters. Today I read that in Ma'arif was published yesterday a photograph of the Abu Mazen's Facebook site that he writes there that we are talking now about all Palestine, but not only about the West Bank. We want to it's on its website in Arabic. Dr. Norman Finkelstein. I was sure that people will ask. Was an enthusiastic supporter of the initiatives to force Israel to comply with UN resolutions and other recommendations on human rights that were made over the years by its affiliate bodies and other NGOs like Amnesty International, even by BDS movement. He is described by advocates of Israel as an anti-Zionist that supports its bitter enemies who wants to destroy it, like Hezbollah. He is considered, and still is, as one of the prominent scholars that give an headshell to new anti-Semitism. In many ways, he was the prestigious recruit of the BDS movement and the internet is loaded with his advocating against the policies of Israel and in favor of two-state solution. But in February, now not many will laugh because not many put attention to it, but in February 2012, his supporters were shocked by an interview he gave to Frank Bard, a French blogger and activist of the British BDS movement. From then, Finkelstein is blamed of harming the Palestinian cause, allegations denied. The highlight of the interview, and I have it also here, if you want to hear it, okay, if not, you read it here. The highlight of the interview was his assertion that the real goal of the BDS movement is to abolish Israel. The movement ignores the Jews' rights and Jewish aspirations to a state of their own, and in this, it disregards and rejects the UN decisions and the international law. The declared goals of the movement are anti-occupation, anti-colonization, refugees' rights of return, and equal rights. But they are only a cover-up to the real objective, the disappearance of Israel. And that's why there is no reference of the two-state solution in any narrative of which the BDS movement supports. Finkelstein emphasizes that people are not idiots, and the BDS movement attempts to force such arguments on the public are going to fail. People will expose the distorted narratives, and as a result, they will embrace Israel narrative about there isn't partner to peace. It seems that what Finkelstein and his many supporters on the blogosphere didn't fully understand then is that the narratives that were produced and adopted by the BDS movement and their supporters are intentionally not going to do justice to history and the facts. As one of his critics, Asad Abu Khalil, mentioned on the internet, of course, Finkelstein thinks that the people or the public is the American one. But he is totally wrong. The BDS movement and other solidarity movements are trying to convince the rest of the world where public attitudes to Israel are very hostile and to recruit them to their ranks. As we could have realized, the updated and the sophisticated narratives of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not the equations of Israel to the Nazis. I think that although many people, including Finkelstein, are still blaming Israel for using the Holocaust in order to justify their colonial methods and their oppressive acts against the Palestinians, it's not a popular narrative anymore thanks to the tireless efforts of many pro-Israel organizations to discredit its use and through the huge investment in Holocaust studies in many countries. Otherwise, the apartheid was chosen not for it, it's just for illustration. The apartheid was chosen as the ultimate method for bashing Israel as the ultimate evil, because it especially targets the people of the post-colonial states. Most of them are not aware, as it common, of the complexity of the conflict, but represent the majority of the world population. The word apartheid for them causes a Pavlovic reaction against its carriers. It's true that similar narratives, including apartheid, racism, colonialism, that are aimed towards Israel are not new. But the world has changed in the last few years. It's the era of the social networks and the unlimited opportunities to express any idea. Guerrilla marketing uses every existing, guerrilla marketing, it's two expressions, uses every existing tool to spread its messages, and many of its principles suit the spreading of narratives, where the cyberspace is considered as the main tool for marketing ideas. I will concentrate on one clause here. I'm speaking to the second one. Sorry. Successful operation is measured by the amount of profits gained, not sales. So, although we are using viral distribution through social networks, through Facebook and other elements, it's not that we want to get to everyone. But if I can recruit Judy Butler or the Russell sorry? Yeah, the Russell Tribunal, it's enough because they will do the secondary market and etc. etc. And in that analysis of the case of Israel and apartheid is impossible here and now. Much was written about the issue, and it's not a specialty. One could find a lot of stuff about it on the net with reference to most of the principal studies and op-eds on the issue. The subject is charging an emotional debate between supporters of Israel and its opponents, but basically Israel doesn't fit to the basic criteria for being labeled as an apartheid state according to the main criteria. It's the last page. Israel is not fitting to the basic criteria of being labeled as apartheid state according to the main criteria specified in the Convention on Apartheid that was adopted by the UN General Assembly in 1972. I jump on. The Convention concentrates on the evils that are an outcome of the racial segregation and discrimination, and I quote, as practiced in South Africa. This phrase is mentioned over and over again as to emphasize that any other so-called similarities like confiscating of property in occupied territories are not, and I quote, crimes of apartheid, division of the population along racial lines is the motto that characterizes apartheid. But as we can already understand, accuracy and positive analysis of documents and taking under consideration the context with all its complexity is not characteristic of the narrative about the conflict. What really matters is, and I quote, the amount of profit from repetitively marketing the distorted narratives to carefully chosen targets. In this case, the people that stand behind this side, it is apartheid and is